Oh man, is this your workshop?
This is my workshop. This is part of it.
First of all, thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
We just figured it has been a minute.
Was it 17 or 18 that I did your podcast?
Yeah, a few things have happened since then.
There's like a big blank spot in the middle.
Something happened. It's a big blur. I don't remember, but we saw you in the before times, and
you know what? You will appreciate this, Anson. 2020 was supposed to be the year of the con for me. I had logged 8 cons doing photos and autographs. It was like an early I had always done the sort of other celebrity row where they were free and it was a lottery. And then, Kristen, my right hand, was like, look, the fans want something transactional. They want to have access to you. So I'm like, great, let's do a whole bunch of cons. So we signed up to do 8. I got paid in advance for all of them, and then COVID. So in the fall of 21, I did 9 cons in 10 weeks. And didn't get COVID, amazingly. Yeah, it was a whirlwind. We went to everything. Fanags, Fusion, it was a fun couple of months.
Well, 2020 was supposed to be our year of travel pre-child. And we got locked down, and then we had a child.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Mazel tov.
Absolutely. It's been an adventure, more so than travel.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You have kids?
I do. I have twin boys. They're 24. And they're in a really good spot now. They both live kind of a few blocks from me here in San Francisco. They both work 2 blocks from the house and occasionally stop by to hang out with us, which is intoxicatingly great.
That's great.
What kind of work are they doing?
One is a chef at a 2 Michelin star restaurant around the corner from me. And the other is the captain over there of the servers. So they both work at the same place.
So when you go, you get excellent service, I imagine.
Well, actually, last night, Addison came by and he was like, he said his brother is now using the fact that they both work there in part of his spiel when he's doing waiting. And so now both boys are occasionally bringing dishes out because they're the twins. It's really neat.
That's great.
Yeah. And so COVID. Well, the most universal thing about COVID is that not only was COVID a trauma on the world and on each community we were in, but like everyone got a nice dish of some personal trauma as well.
Yeah.
What sort of, most people came out of it with, I mean, it's traumatic for sure, but also came out of it with some kind of a reset. Did you experience an upside to any kind of reset associated with that?
Oh yeah, no, it changed my life for the better. I came in here to this cave. We were doing 1 video a week or so, sometimes less. And then when COVID hit, I pulled out my phone and started recording up to 7 videos a week. And it turned me into a full-time YouTuber. 2020 was the first year my YouTube channel was in the black. And then last October, I bought the whole kit and caboodle from my business partners down in LA. So now it's all mine, and we've got it to ourselves, a small crew of 7 of us. And I've never been happier, and I have no interest in chasing television whatsoever, because reality television is in a bad place, Ripley. So yeah, COVID showed me a completely different economic model, and I'm like absolutely over the moon about it.
That's great.
And you get to do what you want.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in here. For Ghostbusters Afterlife, I designed my own version of a proton pack, and then I put a kind of a device up on the front of the pack called an attenuator. I designed and built it from scratch. It's just my idea about what should be there. And I just bought an attenuator from a guy on Etsy, copying mine from my video. It's like this fantastic fandom feedback loop.
Right. And other people are doing your iterations, and it all feeds back to you. That's
on
fantastic.
that front. Anson, a few months ago, I was in LA for a couple of days and had a wonderful breakfast with Will Wheaton and his wife.
Oh, wow.
And Will said, quote, Strange New Worlds is the best Star Trek show ever made. He loves you guys.
Will is too nice, as you know. He's a lovely guy, and very, very, very happy to have him on our side.
Well, what are you up to right now, Adam? You have your own shop. You have total freedom. What do you do?
Yeah, we have a lot of travel coming up. We're heading to London in a week or so to cover the new Ghostbusters film. And also over there's a couple of other franchises we're hoping to spend some time on set. Mm-hmm. So that's a really fun part of what we get to do here is travel around and go to these movie sets, but really specifically like highlight the craftspeople that you don't normally see interviews with, the scenic painters and sculptors and the set dressers. Because you guys know everybody is a storyteller on a set. Everybody is working towards pushing the narrative for us. So it's really fun to go tell those stories. We also, last time we were in England, we went to the Royal Society in London and saw some amazing things like a standard yard from 1847 and a perpetual motion machine. Isaac Newton's Principia, like the original handwritten copy of
oh my God,
the most important science book ever written. So we're going to go back there because one of the things about YouTube, I mean, and the same with television, is you never know what's going to catch fire. Like it can be such a mystery. And these Royal Society videos have just gone gangbusters for us. People really dig them. I really love going there. Those guys are really fun to film with. So we're going to go back.
That's great. I saw the perpetual motion one. And as I won't spoil it, but a perpetual motion that has to be taken out and tuned occasionally.
Yeah, indeed.
There might be something too.
Full marks engineering wise for something that can run for 2 or 3 years without impulse. But yeah, I think I figured it out.
Yeah, I think you did too. And I'm curious, did you glean anything from firsthand encounter with Principia?
The takeaway, well, first of all, I said, do you want me to put on white gloves? And actually, this is when I learned that antiquarian books are not handled with white gloves, because if you put a white glove on, it changes the shape of your fingers, and thus your fine proprioception of where your hands are means that you could do more damage to an old brittle book with gloves than not. So they simply ask you to wash your hands. And so then putting your hands on this thing, it just brings it really close. I have this picture. I have a picture of me on my grandfather's lap in West Virginia in 1967. I'm like 6 months old. And my grandfather Joe has me on this porch. And then I have another picture of my grandfather Joe on that same porch in 1895 on his grandfather's lap, who was born in 1829. So from me with 2 photos, we get back to the dawn of America. And like those kind of scale excursions, those mental excursions, I really dig. They bring the whole world closer, and they bring the past a lot closer.
Right. It's not just history anymore. They're people. You can imagine him sitting there at his desk and putting these thoughts down on paper for the first time.
Well, and it's not his handwriting. It's his assistant's handwriting. Apparently he's sitting there dictating this and someone's furiously writing. Like, what is there? I want to know, what was the day like? Well, I woke up and had some kippered herring, and then I narrated 70 pages of the most important science book in creation.
Well, he famously had troubles rising in the morning.
He didn't know that. It just kind of, you never know when these things are going to take off.
It's true.
Hey,
nice
what
call
are you?
back.
He just
what are you working
strings
on?
the spaghetti at the wall to see what's stuck.
I'm just gonna right. I'm
he
working on a
redefined
thing,
science.
We'll see if it takes off. I don't know.
Well, you know that he also spent the last 20 years of his life a virulent anti-counterfeiter working for the Royal Mint. Like he's the reason we have ridges on the quarter. That was
Wow.
to keep people from peeling a little gold off the edge of a gold sovereign and keeping some of it for themselves.
Oh, okay.
And
Oh, wow.
and being a precision freak, didn't like that at all.
No, no. And he like advocated death for counterfeiters. He was absolutely virulent about it.
They did execute someone. Did you know this story?
I don't know that. No.
Okay, it's apparently apparently a very serious, sort of dour kind of dude, and someone mentioned that the only time they'd ever seen him really happy was he had, in his role, condemned a counterfeiter to death, and he showed up early with a sack lunch. So he didn't want to miss it.
It's
And
literally his version of popcorn.
and somebody said, like, I've never seen him happier.
Wow. Wow. What a monster. So there is this thing, you know, how he invented calculus just in order to figure out how to solve the mathematical equations he's working with. And there are other people who have solved calculus. This is, it's not a lone event. And there have been, like, there was some other industry in which a scientist was like, I think I've figured out a way to do the math of this thing, and it's this, and it turns out it was calculus. And years ago, a friend of mine was at a conference where in attendance was a lot of super high level mathematicians, and he's hanging out with a few of them, and like these are Fields Medal winners. These are like aliens in their approach to numbers, and he's hanging out with a couple of them, and one of them says to the other, how old were you when you came up with calculus? And what he was like, I was 13. And the other one was like, I was 12. That, like, at a certain level, calculus just occurs to the kind of mind that loves math at that level of intelligence. That is, I didn't expect that part.
I didn't know that's much further, but at the same time, I kind of get, you know, like running into problems that you can't solve any other way, and that just being an evolution. But I mean, I'm not claiming I would have ever, if I lived to be a million, I never would have. I still never would have. But it
does. You're right. It does make sense. The abstraction that calculus brings to being able to take apart a problem to its components is you're totally right. It's like I remember saying to a mechanic that I couldn't believe that Leonardo da Vinci designed the differential. And he was like, the moment you start getting into how those wheels move, it's actually a pretty straightforward way to solve that problem.
We talked about this in the original podcast that we did many years ago, that so long ago that none of us remember when we did it. But we did talk about the artisan's role in innovation. And it's not, you just can't sit there and think about this stuff abstractly. You've got to, as you know better than most, you start building a thing and that didn't quite happen like I thought. Now I got to solve this. I got to solve these things that you would never would have thought of if you didn't try to build the thing.
Well, that's so I spent a lot of time on this YouTube channel called Number File, which is run by Brady Heron, and it is a bunch of charming British mathematicians revealing the deepest secrets of math to you. And there are videos I understand about 10% of, and videos I understand maybe 70% of. But one of the things I love is exactly what you're saying is I recognize the exact correlation between the way a mathematician tries to solve a problem in their head and what I'm doing at my workbench. What any creative person is doing in their creative endeavor. You know, we start tackling a creative problem. There are things that are really obvious, and we solve those while we're thinking about these more complex problems. You know, we all have our own methods of sort of stirring those pots and getting those juices flowing. And I'm sure that in a mathematician's brain, numbers have a physicality and a mood to them, just in the same way that materials do for me, and scripts and plot lines and character interactions do for you, right? They provide all this fertile territory in the landscape of their heads. And I can't conceive of what that would feel like. So I'm fascinated by the idea of it.
Well, even that, I mean, even that, the characters and script, that is too ephemeral for most of my process, which is why I have a pottery studio. You know, I finally understand why Daniel Day-Lewis became a cobbler. It's his opportunity to understand craft from a completely physical, simple, in front of you way, so that you're not blinded by blinded from the forest for the woods around you.
There's a, you're totally right. And I mean, I like to joke that my workbench is where I get to pretend I have some measure of control over anything. And you remind me of something. We were talking about Clive Owen the other day, my wife and I, because she had just rewatched Closer, the Mike Nichols film with Julia Roberts and Natalie Portman. And one of her assertions is that if you watch that movie, everyone's best work in that movie is opposite Clive Owen. Like, there must be something great about being across from him, that you get something from that. And yesterday I had a friend of mine here in the cave, and we were building something together. And it was a very, like, that we got to a bit of a flow state while working together. And it was deeply pleasurable. And I feel like those things have a real, those are really analogous to each other. That difference between the solitary process, which is really easy to do at the workbench, and then there's that, wheeling other people into your process and the wonderful things that come from that.
Yeah, I think it's harder to innovate, perhaps, by yourself. Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, you know what? It's funny. The first show that I did after Mythbusters, the second show I did after Mythbusters, was called Savage Builds. And once I broke the first episode and wrote it down on the whiteboard, I'm sitting there looking at it in my office, and I was like, what is wrong? Oh, I need to fight with Jamie about this outline. That was a key part of my process, was bringing him in and him pooping all over all of my ideas, and then us getting in and fighting about it, and then something really amazing comes out of that. I was like, shit, I went in and got my producers and like, someone come and fight with me about this outline. There is, I mean, that push-pull of working with others which can be so awful. At its worst, it can be just really excruciating, and at its best, it's transcendent.
I think you need friction.
Anson, I'm curious about your pottery studio. What is your focus on the pottery? Are you doing pinch pots or spun? Are you working with glazes?
Mostly thrown. I'm completely self-taught, which is not always a good idea.
I'm a big proponent of that.
It's a good thing.
Right now I'm working on symmetry, and so I'm throwing a lot of sets.
Nice.
Because my progress is inchmeal, just because it's not what I do 24/7. I have a lot of other things in my life, but it's what I did for my birthday this year. We were just talking about Brandon's birthday earlier. He decided that he wanted to turn 50 underwater, which he did, and I just wanted to make mugs for people.
Amazing.
Which is, so I invited all of my best friends, including Brandon, over, and I made them take pottery from me.
Oh,
it was beautiful. They're beautiful.
Well, that's the best thing about making stuff, is giving it away.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and with pottery especially, it was like, I think it's Seth Rogen, who's also a potter. He said it's like going to yoga, and at the end of the session, you have a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Know?
I was at a restaurant where the miso soup came out in wooden bowls, and I came back here knowing that I want to make a pair of wooden miso bowls on my wood lathe, because I realized, I have very specific points of view about the slope and the shape of a bowl. I want to implement that.
Did you copy it, or did you?
No. I haven't done it yet. This would be me mostly pulling out one of my wood blanks and drawing up a profile and really just trying to nail it. And like you were saying, Anson, I want to do two of them. I want them identical, and I want them as a set.
Sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
Are you going to try to match what you remembered, or do you have your own?
No. I'm not going to try and match what I remembered, because actually the shape of these was not that refined. I had issues.
I knew it. This could be better.
Look, I've redounded to feeling like everything's about the point of view, right? Like everything I tackle the beginning is a soup and I don't know where to start. And as I start to like think about how to solve some of the problems, at some point a penny drops and I have a point of view on it. And whether that's a narrative or it's an experience that I'm looking for, or it's a reference point that I've used as a handle to shake loose the rest of it. It's all about that, like, do you or don't you have a point of view? And there's a ton of shit I don't have a point of view on at all. Like, I don't care what length the grass is in that lawn, but like on these bowls, I have a really specific way I want it to feel when it's in my hand and touching my mouth.
That's amazing that the way you just put that, because I have heard writers, people who teach writing, say exactly the same thing you just said. Like you could take what you just said and transpose it to a writing class, or even an acting class. Exactly.
Yeah.
Where there's a certain point, in a certain way, craft is craft. There is a science of craft.
There's this wonderful moment in Steven Soderbergh wrote a book about the making of Sex, Lies, and Videotape. And he describes this moment of working with James Spader on the character. And late in the rehearsal process, Spader says to him, the new director, you do know that at a certain point, this character becomes mine and not yours, right? It's like, I'm just letting you know, at a certain point, there will be a transfer. And I mean, I hear that and I think, yeah, he means once he's got a point of view, then he's off to the races with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at a certain point, you do have to own it. Right.
But but I do appreciate his formal, moment, the handoff of announcing the handoff was going to happen. I appreciate that.
I imagine in different circumstances that can be a complex and fraught moment.
Right. I think it clears. I think that should clear up a few things around here.
But there is that moment when you have the point of view. That's one of my favorite moments. And then later on, when the piece is done and I get to look at it, and what it shows me or the experience I get from the thing is so much deeper than the point of view I thought I had. That's the part that because my friend Tom is an artist. He likes to say 1 + 1 = 1,000,000. And it's like you take your point of view and you put it on this thing, and all of a sudden, like, there's a whole universe here in this thing you built.
It's also why sometimes after you finish writing a script, you get to the end and then realize, oh, I see what this is about.
Tarantino talks about that. People ask him about how do you layer in all this cultural stuff in your scripts? And he's like, I don't. He's like, I write characters and scenes that I'm interested in. And then once I'm done, I do a post analysis and I learn that I put all this stuff in here.
That's a man who's in touch with his muse.
Yeah.
So much of creation is learning how to get out of the way.
But I've always loved the story about Terry Southern and Stanley Kubrick writing Dr. Strangelove. They were writing a serious version of Failsafe, and they were trying to make it scary. And yet, as they were writing, every scene that worked was absurd. And they eventually realized, you know what? I think we have to write this as a comedy. We got to lean to where the material is taking us instead of where we thought it should go.
I think that's where the quote comes from about, like, what kind of movie is it? If the subject is World War III, Armageddon, it depends on where the story starts. I don't know if this is Kubrick, I can't remember, but he said, and if it starts in the living room, it's a drama. If it starts in the bathroom, it's a comedy. Like, where do you get the news that the world is about to end?
Oh, that's neat.
And remember, Dr. Strange said it starts in the bathroom. Like, it's not him, but it's the General Jack Turgidson and his mistress,
the secretary.
He's in the bathroom, right? And she's like, someone's on the phone, and he's like, I'm busy.
When he's that, he does that. He's on the phone. You know about how he did one over the top take for every scene for Kubrick, and Kubrick chose all those takes.
Yeah. Because he didn't want to, I don't think. He was like, this seems kind of big, Stanley. He's like, just give me one.
There's Anthony Hopkins tells a great, he told me this story when we were talking about actors and control, like just the work you have to do as an actor to relinquish control, right?
Right.
is he was telling me that when George C. Scott was doing Shakespeare in the Park, he did the first Shakespeare in the Park. He was doing Shylock as in Merchant of Venice,
Wow.
and he was wrestling with the role as he usually did, and his wife was in a yoga group apparently, and had sent her friend, who's the instructor, to George's dressing room for lunch hour one day to show him some breathing exercises. And she's working with him, and he's like breathing, and what is this? What is this for? And she says, well, it's to help you release all of your tension. And he thinks about it, and he goes, kind of like my tension. And Hopkins thought that was just the funniest thing he had ever heard in his life. And occasionally between takes, and you would look at me and go, kind of like my tension.
Makes perfect sense.
We all love our tension, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You're like, if there's no tension at all, then where are you going? What's happening next? You know, like,
Yeah.
No tension sounds like being a corpse.
It's such an honest response. Yeah, I love that. As I get older, I love it when people reveal themselves in those unexpected ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when they tell you something that's unabashedly the deep truth.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had an example right now. I don't, but like, there's something about that I find really like refreshing and always charming. Never not.
And the older they are, the more likely it is to happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, age really does. You have seen some shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've seen enough people grow up too. You kind of see people as trajectories.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You can see where they're shooting off to sometimes, and it's really quite lovely.
And then to turn around, look, yeah, I think we're saying the same thing. Turning around, looking at younger people and remembering, oh, I remember this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the most surprising thing is that I didn't realize when I was in my 20s that all the older adults could see everything that was going on with me, but they're not going to tell you because you just got to figure it all out for yourself.
Right. Because they've been there too, and they know you're not going to listen.
Yeah, they know you're full of shit. They can see it on your face. They can hear it in what you're saying, and they're just going to let you go do what you do because we all got to take care of ourselves.
And that's how you learn.
And speaking of trajectories, what's next for you, Adam?
Oh, it's a lovely question. Taking over control of this YouTube channel is probably one of the more affirming things I have ever done in my life. And the crew that I get to work with is amazing. And I'm really grateful and honored to be able to do that. And that's a long way of saying, as we bring our feet underneath us in this endeavor, there'll be a moment at which in which I feel like we'll look around, the seven of us, and be like, okay, this is pretty good. What do we want to do from here? And I have little ideas about the future, but for right now, it's really about like being in the present and kind of grinding this out in a really specific way that I'm excited about. And I'm really excited about that moment when we get to creatively like choose the direction. Because I never thought that like visiting museums and looking at the weird stuff from their coffers would be a fertile area of content. But I can't imagine anything better than traveling to museums all over the world, looking at the weird stuff in their basements. I love, when I started going to Comic-Con, one thing that's nice is meeting famous people you admire. That's lovely. But man, I always want to meet the showrunners and the directors and the writers. I want to talk to the people that are dealing with the scale and the scope of these endeavors. That always really thrills me. And on this channel, I get to interview those folks. I get to bring people over here and build stuff with them. I think of my main job as being a permission machine. I want to wheel everyone into this place where we're all makers. We're all using our point of views to make things that didn't exist. And that is a holy and vital and deeply human endeavor. And that we get to celebrate that on this channel is like one of the great graces of my life.
It's really inspiring to watch. I love your channel.
Oh, thank you. I want to do some more live museum stuff. A few years ago, before COVID, I did a live one-day build with a bunch of people at the Smithsonian in DC. And it was a remarkable experience. And there's more of that coming in the future because I have acting training from my past. I've done stage tours of nonfiction shows around the world. I'm very comfortable in front of an audience, but there is something about building in front of an audience that exposes me to the audience and the audience to me in a way that is wholly unique in my experience. And that's really interesting to me. So I think of that kind of stage and that kind of interaction with an audience where I'm actually making for real while they're watching as to be a key part of the future.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's a great idea. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I've done a few of these. I did one a few years ago at the Exploratorium. I built a walking robot over 3 days in their lot right outside the museum. I parked my Land Cruiser in the middle of the lot. Every day I spent 8 hours welding this thing together. And at the end, it was like 8 o'clock at night and I ran it for an audience of about 200 people. And I mean, trying to tune out people watching you while you're making wrong decisions. Like I screwed up something. I heard some guy like telling my producer, like, I think he's got this wrong. And I'm like trying not to listen to this guy. And then late at night between days 2 and 3, I'm like, oh, he's right. And I come in the next day and I fix it. And I thanked him. But that was really like, there was another part at the Smithsonian when I'm trying to fit this thing into a hole and it's very, 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 it's off, but by a very small amount. And I realized I could probably use my Leatherman to sort of carve this hole to be bigger. And so I sort of did some scooping and I looked at it, maybe it's not big enough. And I did a little more. And then I popped this window in. And when it popped in, all these people started clapping and whooshing. And like, I had forgotten there were people there. I had forgotten they were watching my experience of getting this thing into the window. And then we all sort of celebrated together. And that was like lovely. There's that David Mamet quote where he says, you can blackmail an audience into a standing ovation, but you can never blackmail them into a gasp. That gasp, that's the one I'm chasing.
Well, yeah, who said that? Sorry.
David Mamet.
Oh, yeah. Same thing for a laugh. An audience can't fake a laugh.
I've always thought of magic and comedy as the two art forms that are the most supremely difficult because they have actual in-the-moment stakes.
Yeah, totally.
Well, what you need to do now, Adam, is put some bleachers in your workshop. And then you'll always sell tickets. And people are always, you can have that pressure all the time.
Well, what I want is, I mean, you can see behind me, this is sort of like a museum, and that's on purpose because I would like to turn this into an interactive museum.
Really?
That is a long-term plan.
Oh, cool.
But I have over 20 suits of armor, 25 spacesuits, 75 costumes from movies. There's so much to show and to share. And I love bringing, like when you guys visit, you will see I love nothing more than giving tours of this place and showing people everything. The gun cabinet back there I built it because often when people would come, they'd want to see movie firearms and I'd be running all over the place, gathering them and then putting them all back. I'm like, I got to put them in one place so that they're easy to get to. So that's one of the big long-term plans per your earlier question, Edson, is I would love a space where other people and me can go see the whole collection all laid out at once.
What did you get out of the being watched, performance and creating at the same time? Like what changes? I mean, you had to tune that one guy out, but like,
well, so look, I'm not an actor. I have some acting training, but enough to know that I'm not an actor. Enough to know that, but I also do have an understanding of that transcendence that can be found within that practice.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the interaction that happens with an audience on stage is a fundamentally different experience than any other medium that I work in. And it makes me jealous of musicians and actors, because every audience is radically different. They feed you in different ways on different nights. They bring different things out of you. And I love that conversation. I really enjoy that back and forth that happens when you get up on a stage and start telling a story. And when I'm actually making something, this is something that almost no one ever gets to witness, really, watching me make something in situ. My cameramen, my producers, and some people that I work with. But for the most part, that's not a process that people get to witness. And all I do is watch YouTube videos of people making stuff. I watch Japanese sword makers. I watch potters. I watch glass blowers. I've been obsessed with this Australian YouTube channel where all they do is fix mining equipment, like hydraulic cylinders that weigh 20,000 pounds. And they're like, well, we just pulled one part out and we fixed it and put it back together. So doing it on stage is like the best of both worlds to me. It's that getting to get into my zone where I'm honing into what's on the workbench. But then there's also that like macro zoom out of we're all here together in this room and something remarkable might happen.
Well, guys, I hate to do this, but I have to go.
We've run a bit long.
Yeah. So Adam, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you so much for having me anytime.
Brandon, did you have anything else?
Yes, I have one thing.
Okay.
It's totally selfish.
Yeah.
But I just made a thing.
Oh, show it.
I made a thing. This is for the movie that I'm wrote and directed. And I figured I needed to put more of myself into this. I brought in my own special effects. Background.
Those look almost like cordyceps.
They are. That's exactly what they are.
That is absolutely disgusting, and I love it.
Brandon got scooped by The Last of Us.
I know. I wrote this years ago, and I've been into the idea forever, but I finally got to make it. And it doesn't. Well, I was going to demonstrate it. I'm not going to do it over the computer now, because right before we got on, there is a bladder effect in here.
Yeah.
The head, this part swells up. But I blew it a minute ago. There was some old water and blood in there. So
yummy. Well, that looks appropriately disgusting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I would love for Adam to see a thing I made. Now that's happened.
I'm delighted.
The Well is produced, edited, and recorded by Anson Mount and me, Brandon Edgens. Theme music written by Jonathan Myberg and performed by Brandon Edgens. Until next time, have a good time.